Hi there! Welcome to another video on my custom content management system project. In today's video, I will finally make it so that I can edit this page in a what you see is what you get kind of a way. So if you didn't see the previous videos, you can check them out in the link in the description. So basically, I started out with this free template from html5up.net, and then I modified it so that I can use PHP to render all the elements on the page. So here I'm rendering the header with my own custom text and a custom name for the menu, and then I'm creating the links in the menu, and then I'm rendering the menu, and I render the banner and all these spotlights here, and then these articles and these footer links and a form in the footer and all this good stuff. And then it will render it on the page like this. But in today's video, I want to make it so that I can click here directly and edit some text over here. I can edit the headings and the text and everything. So let's get started. I actually coded this already for 1.5 hours today, but then I realized that I didn't plug in my microphone, so I have to do this all over again. So hopefully now it's going to be a bit faster. So let's start. First of all, I will fast forward to the part where we finished off in the last episode. So in the last episode, we made it so that we can read the page from the database by the ID and then render it. So if I go here in my database, I have this elements table where I have all the elements in JSON format. And then I have the pages table where we have just one page called front page. So now when I go to this page, it will get the data from the database and then render the page based on that. But now I want to click here and I want to edit this. But before we do that, I have one more refactoring that I want to do. In the previous episode, I did a lot of refactoring, but there's one thing I still want to do. I promise this will be fast. So in all of these elements, I have this getElementType method, which gets the enum for this particular element. But now this doesn't really make any sense. The point of this is so that I can save a number in the database that represents this current element. But now the idea would be that I would enforce it so that every element has its own number. But now I can just put here, instead of article, I can just put header and it will work. I won't get any errors. So this doesn't help anything. And another thing is that I called the enum names the same name as the class of the element. So it doesn't make any sense to have it here. So I will remove all of these in every element. All right, that is done. But now I still want to get the type of the element as the number of the enum. So here I have this element types enum, which I'm actually going to rename to element type because I think that makes more sense. So now I want to get the number of the enum based on the name of the class. So how do I do that? I will go to the element class, and instead of this abstract method getElementType, I will create another non-abstract method. I will call it getEnumValue, and this will return an int. And then I will loop through all the cases in the enum. And then I will say, if the case is the same as this getShort class name, which I will create now, then I will return the case value, and this should be the case name. Now, I can't just do like this, I don't think, because this magic constant will include the namespace, but I don't want the namespace. So I will create my own getShort class name method. And then I will add here, if we didn't find a case, then I will throw an exception. And I will create that. And here I will use the reflection class again. So I will say reflection is new reflection class of this object. And then I will return reflection getShort name. So this should give me only the name of the element, the object. And now I will go through every place where I use this element type, and I will change it to element type because it's not types anymore. That's it. And then I will search for the getElementType. So this doesn't exist anymore. So here I will just say this getElement get enum value. So this is where I'm saving the element to the database. I will get the enum value like this. And here I'm getting the array that I want to save in the database. So here I will say the same thing, get enum value. And here I'm checking if the type is footer or if the type is spotlight. But now again, this doesn't make any sense because I called the elements, the classes, the same thing as the enum types. So I can just say if element instance of footer, then do that. And if element instance of spotlight, then do this. And now this is much more cleaner. So now that is the refactoring that I want to do. Now let's check that this page still works. It does not work. Let me check the error logs. Class element type not found. That's right, because I didn't rename the file, so the auto-loading doesn't work. So remove the S from here and then refresh this. And the website works still. That is great. So now let's go into the editing. Well, here's what I want to do. I am going to create new templates for the editing. So here in the templates, solid state elements, I have a template for each of these different elements, how they are rendered. But now I want to create new templates for how they are edited. So let's do that. Let's create a new folder here and let's call it edit elements. And I will copy all of these in there. And then I will go through all of these, and for every place that I want to edit the text, I will add an input. So here in the article we have the title. So I will add input type equals text, and I should have some kind of class so I can modify how they look. So I will say edit input, and I should have some kind of name for this so that I can post this data to some endpoint and then edit the database based on that. So let's say name will be element and new item in the element array, and this will be title. Now I'm not sure if I can do this. I might have to add some index here manually in the PHP side. And then I will set the value to this. And for the text, I will use a text area. And I will do the names and values in the same way. And then put the text inside there and call this text. Now, the link text and the link URL, I don't think I will allow changing it directly because it's a link, so it's difficult. If I click it, then it will go to the URL. And I can't edit the URL by typing in there. So actually, this is just an article which should really come from some other place as an automatic excerpt of an article. But let's do it like this. And the image, I have to figure out how to change that as well. But what I also think I want to do is add some hidden fields here for the image and the link URL and the link text. Because if I don't send them with the request, then they will disappear when I save it in the database. So I will call this element image, and the value will be image. And I will do the same thing for the link URL and the link text. So now that should work. Let me do this for all the elements. And here I also have these articles, but that will be other elements and they will have their own inputs inside there. So I don't have to save this in a hidden input. Okay, now that is done. I did not do it for the menu or the header because in the header it's also a link, and in the menu for me it doesn't make sense that I can edit it directly like that. The menu should be a separate thing, or at least let's figure it out later. But now one thing I want to do now is that in the menu I have these links, but I don't have a template for the links, and also I don't have a template for the form or the form fields. So let's make those. So if I go to the form object, I have this custom render method here, but I want to move this into a template. Now we have this for each here, but after the refactorings that we did in the previous video, we don't have to do this in the form method's own render function. So let's take this and remove the whole thing. And let's create here in the edit elements, or actually in the regular elements first, a form.html. And here we should have a placeholder for the action. And we should have a placeholder for the fields and for the submit button text. And then let's copy this to the edit elements. And well, there's not really anything to edit in this one, at least not right now. And then I want to create the menu links. So let's create a new file, menulink.html. And we will copy this and remove this from here because it is inheriting it from the element class. So let's go here and add placeholders for the URL and text. And then the form field, this one. Now we have an if statement in here. So what I think I'm going to do, I am going to create two new classes, a text area class and an input field class or text input class. So let's do that. I will copy this, I will remove this, and I should add some getters in here. And actually, I don't need the type because the type will be a different class. The text area type and the text input type will inherit from form field class. So I will just add a public function get label, and it will just return the label, this label. And let's create a text area field.html. And it will look something like this. Now, I should figure out something for this ID, but right now I'm just using the label as it is. And I will create one for the text input. And it will be an input type text. And then I forgot I have to add these into the edit elements as well. So then in the edit section, the label will be editable. And I will remove this 4 from this label because I think it will focus on this wrong element then. And text area field, I will do the same thing. And the menu link. Well, the menu link is not going to be editable like this. And then let me go through all of these. Do I have any other? I will search for function render. Footer link, this I have to do as well. I don't want to use custom render functions anymore. And here I need some getters as well. And let's create a template for this. Footerlink.html. And add the placeholder for type and URL and link name. And then let's copy it over to edit elements, but it can be just like this because it's not going to be editable directly. So now I only have one render function here in the element class and in the page class, but that's separate. So now I would like to be able to change the context in which I render these. So are they in the edit context or the view context? So let's add here a protected string context. Or should we create an enum? Let's create an enum. Let's call it a view context. And let's set a default view context. And I will create that enum. And it will have a case view, which will be view, and a case edit, which will be edit. So now I can't accidentally type something wrong, view or edit, because it's in an enum. And then let's make a function, public function set context, and it will take a view context and set this context to context. And then here, let's add prefix here and say prefix is nothing, and if this context is view context edit, then the prefix will be edit. And here I noticed I used the reflection class before to get the short name, but now I can just do this get short class name because I created that function before. So now, if we set this, let's set it manually to edit here, and let's refresh the page and let's see what will happen. we are getting some kind of error because the page is completely blank. Uncaught error, call to undefined method, get action. I forgot to implement getters in the form. So let's refresh now and see if it now works. Hey, now we have these edit fields here in the place of all these headings and these text. So that looks pretty cool. But what I would like to do is to have it, well, here we have heading. We did something wrong. It's called title. So let me change it here to title. So now we have the titles here too. Okay, now that looks pretty cool. But here we do not have the form anymore. So let's see what is going on. I know what is going on. In the database, I still have the data saved in another way. So let me fix this for now by hand. So here we have the type 6 here, which actually I should go to element types. And now I should remove the form field here because we don't use the form field anymore by itself. And I should add the ones that I added. So I should add footer link as 11 and text area field as 12 and input text field as 13. And I think I didn't create these yet. That is correct. So I'll create those. Text area field.php, and I will copy it from form field. And now this will extend the form field. So this will be text area field. So I don't need to have the getter here, and I don't have to have the constructor here. It's just an empty class. And let's do the same thing for text input field.php. So now if I change my JSON, I should change it so that the text fields are type 12 and the text area is type 13. Was that correct? Yes. And footer link is type 11. So it is type 4 here now. Is that what is a footer link? Oh, I had a footer link already. So this should be 11 and 12. So 11, 11 and 12. And then let's save this manually in the database right now so that we can get it in the correct format. And we get an error now. Let's see what is wrong. Input text field. I call it text input field. Refresh. And now we are back to a working page. And hopefully we have the form here too. Yes, now we have a form here. So we have the name as the label and then, well, now we have a text area. What happened there? I put them the wrong way. Let's put this as 11 and this one as 12. Okay, so now the name and the email are text inputs and the message is a text area. Now here is something I have to fix as well because I have the line break here. So this is because I changed in the footer this get address to new line to line break. But actually what I want to do is I want to have just get address like this, and then I will have a get formatted address like this. And I will pass in here the context to these getters. So I will say view context, and default is view context view. So then if context is view context edit, then we will return this get formatted address. Else we will return just the address as it is in the database. And one more equal sign here. And now I have to pass in to the getters the view context. So I will go to the element class, and here where I render the elements, I will pass the context to the getter. So then it will return the right format of the property. So let's do this and refresh the page. And we still get this. And the reason why I get this is because I saved it in the database again already with the line break, which I shouldn't do. So I will remove it from here. I did not save it like that. So there's a problem here. I have it in two places, the getter. When I get the array, the context should be edit. But that shouldn't matter in this case. The getter is now edit. So I put these the wrong way. And now I'm thinking maybe I should have the edit as the default context. Or not. Which is more error prone. Let's leave it this way. And let's refresh the page. Okay, so now it looks nice. So now we can edit all of these text here, everywhere. But there's one thing that I want to change. I don't want to have inputs like this. I want it to look just like the actual page. What you see is what you get. So how can I do that? Now here's what I think I can do. If I go here to inspect and I add to the element style font family inherit, and because I put the input inside the h2, then it should inherit its style from that parent element. And then if I say font size inherit and padding inherit, border inherit. Actually, I don't want border here because the border would come already from the parent element. None. And background none. And width will be 100. Margin none. Margin 0. And padding 0 as well. Color inherit. Text decoration inherit. Font weight inherit. Text transform inherit. Line height inherit. Text align inherit. Is there some way to do inherit everything? Star inherit. I don't think that's valid. Is that valid? Really? I'm an idiot. No, there's no star. Okay, now let's move this into a separate CSS file. Let's make a folder in the public folder, CSS, and a new file, editor.css. And let's put the edit input to be like this. And I will add important, because this is very important. And then in the index, I will add my own style. And now if I refresh the page, then everything looks almost as it should. There is some margin or something in there. Do I have to set margin bottom 0? No. Height auto inherit. Okay, that's it. So I need to add that. Refresh. So now I think that the page looks exactly like it did before. But I can edit all of these text here. Now there's a link in the email address. But I can change these texts. That's great. Okay, so how do we now post these changes to some endpoint and then save it to the database? Let's see, if I go to the index and I wrap this whole thing in a form. And let's go to save.php. Now, there might be a problem here because I have a form already on the page. So now I have a form wrapped inside of a form. So let's see, let's create that save.php here in the public folder. And let's just echo out what we get. So now, if I refresh this page, it still works. But now this form looks weird. I think that is because we have it inside another form. So we have to figure out some other way to do this. But let's try if we don't have a button to, but if we go to console and we say document query selector form submit, then we get to the save.php and here we have all these elements. Heading, this is cool, text, articles. Now, yeah, we get everything, but these should be grouped together. But now they're all in their separate things. So let me fix that. Let's go to the element class and let's do this. In the template, let's replace where I had the element like this. Let's replace this and put some sort of ID in there that is different for every element. So let's say template equals string replace element like this with element and some sort of index inside here in template. And now we should create this index. Now how should we create this index? When we render a new element, we should give it a new index. So let's create an index here. Let's say public static index is 0 and it's an integer. And when we render, we will say static index plus plus. So now every time we render a new object, it gets a new index. And then we actually use this here. And then we have some nested elements. So we should pass to the render method the parent element as well. So let's do that. Let's say optional integer parent. And we should pass the index of the parent. So maybe we should have this as a global. Let's say global index. And then we will have a public int index. So we increment the global index first, and then if this doesn't have an index yet, because we might render something multiple times, but we don't want to change the index. So if this doesn't have an index, then this index will be static global index. And then this will be parent index. Or no, it will be the parent element, because then we can get the index of that. So it's not an int, it's an element. And then when we call render, we will pass in this as the parent, because here we are going through all the properties, and if there are elements, then we render those as well. And we render them as children of this element. And here I will use this index. So now this should only be added if we are in the edit context. And I should also add if this has an ID. If this element has an ID, so it's already in the database, then we should add that ID as a hidden form element. And this should be before that. And the value of this will be this ID. And we should add the parent as well. If we have a parent, then we get the parent's ID as parent. I'm using underscore here so that it doesn't mix up with the actual properties of the elements. So let's see if this still works. If I go here now, I get an error. ID must not be accessed before initialization. I should set this as the index, because not all elements have an ID yet. Although they should have at this point. Let's see what happens now. Now we get the page here, and it's editable. Now something weird happened with these articles. They are not side by side anymore, but they are still editable. And this form is a bit weird. But let's see what happens if we submit this again. Okay, now we have grouped these things. So we have a heading and a text, title, text, link URL, link text. And then we have these articles here. I'm noticing that we do not have an ID. And here is something weird going on. And then we have some empty elements with only a parent. So let's first figure out why we don't get the ID, because these are coming from the database already. Let's take a look at the source code of the page. None of them have an ID. That is interesting. Let me add some debugging here to when we set the element ID. Wait a minute, we are not setting the ID. Now I'm struggling with this problem. What is going on here? So for some reason I am not getting to this from database at all. I put die here and it's still not dying. Aha, so here's the problem. I'm never actually calling these elements get from database. I'm only calling pages from database, and then it has fetch elements, and then it generates the elements from the JSON data. So in fact I should add the set ID here as well. So here in fetch elements I should set the ID. So here I will have the object equals to this, and then I will say object set ID into element ID. And then I will add the object to the list. Now I could call here, I could just select the IDs of the elements and then call the from database of the element. But that would create more database queries, so not a good idea. So now all the elements should have an ID. Let's see if this works. We get an internal server error. And the error is cannot use standard class as I'm reusing this element. I'm renaming element here. So let's call this JSON. And let's try this again. Now we get the page here again, and I can edit it. And this article list looks weird again. But otherwise it's okay. And now if I submit this form, now we have an ID here. The first one is empty, and it's ID 1. And we still get these empty elements with a parent. So let's first fix a couple of these issues here when I have this weird title. Now here's one problem. I have to add the hidden elements here. I think that is why I get some empty elements, because the header doesn't have these hidden fields. And the menu as well. Alright, those should be fixed now. So let's go back here, refresh it, and send it again. Okay, now we have the heading here. It has the ID 1, ID 2, ID 3. Okay, that looks better now. But then, when we get to the form is still fine, but then these don't have the actual text in there. Let's go check the source code. Okay, these are not being replaced. They don't get the ID. I called them elements, but it should be element. So now if I refresh this and I post it, then now we have everything here and it seems to look okay. Alright, and now we have the name, email and message here as well, and they have a parent. But they don't have an ID, but they don't have to have an ID because they have a parent. Okay, so they are part of this, a part of 19. Yes. Now I should add the type here as well. So what's happening here is that number 16 is the footer, and then number 20 is a form field in the form, which is in the footer. So the parent 19, so this 19 is actually the form, which has a parent of 6. But now there's no indication of this 19 that it's a form. So I should add the type here as well. So let's do that. Go back to the element, and when I render it, I will add the type in there, always. Type will be this get enum value. So now if I go back here and I refresh this and I send the form, then now everyone has an ID and a type. And if I go back here, then here we have the type 5, which should be a form. Let's validate that. Number 5 is a form. Okay, so now according to the data that I have here posted from the website, I should be able to save this data in the database and update the old ones. But now this video is getting way too long, so I will do that in the next video. So if you want to see that video, go ahead and subscribe to my channel so you won't miss it when I post it. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.